Before going into politics, Donald Trump had a very rich past with pro wrestling. What a delight to present to you on the Wrestling Paradise the craziest stories of his history with WWE, which may surprise you. Are you ready to be shocked to learn how Donald Trump's wife at the time almost got bitten by a snake near the ring at WrestleMania in the 80s? Are you wondering what other wrestlers besides Bobby Lashley could have represented him at the Battle of the Billionaires in 2007? Would you like to know how the 45th President of the United States reacted when Vince McMahon lit a joint in front of him at a concert in his arena? Do you want to find out why the WWE boss was mad at Trump backstage after their first TV segment together? And are you curious to discover how the real estate mogul revolutionized WrestleMania when he hosted it twice? You will know everything and much more at the end of our video. You are on the Wrestling Paradise, the craziest stories about Donald Trump in WWE. Here we go! In 2007, the Battle of the Billionaires between Vince McMahon and Donald Trump was one of the main attractions of WrestleMania. In what will be one of the most watched editions of the Showcase of the Immortals of all time, they will each have their own representative to determine which one of them will have his hair shaved. But for the record, several completely different options were studied before Bobby Lashley and Umaga were the two champions of the Billionaires. As incredible as it may seem, there were talks at one time that Donald Trump would be represented by Hulk Hogan, the pro wrestling star in the 80s, and that Vince McMahon would be represented by The Big Show. The idea would have been to recreate in a way the famous match between Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant that took place at WrestleMania 3, but this time with another giant 20 years later. Then, when Big Show chose to go heal his injuries, the Great Khali was considered to replace him. But it was cancelled when Hogan apparently asked Vince McMahon for too much money to do it. At some point, the officials will think about doing Shawn Michaels against Booker T instead. But again, it will be called off because Michaels will have to replace Triple H, who was injured, to face John Cena in the main event of WrestleMania. Rey Mysterio to represent Trump and Hardcore Holly to represent the boss of the company were also considered before we finally got to Bobby Lashley and Umaga. What is certain is that when we hear all these different matchups, we can see that WWE fumbled a lot before making its final choice. At the end of the 80s, Donald Trump hosted WrestleMania 2 years in a row at Trump Plaza in Atlantic City, this town that he had the ambition to transform into the Las Vegas of the East Coast. It was also historical that the Showcase of the Immortals took place in the same venue 2 years in a row. You should know that from that time, the billionaire was already a wrestling fan and a loyal supporter of the WWE, since he was the one who paid to host WrestleMania. He will have the opportunity to meet the top wrestlers of this period, and more particularly the legend Hulk Hogan, who even made a promo in which he said Donald was a Hulkamaniac. But another completely crazy interaction there was between one of the superstars of the time and the real estate mogul was the one with Jake Roberts. He had a gimmick, and not just anyone. He brought a snake into the ring. And when he realized that Trump's wife at that time, Ivana, spent her time drinking champagne and not paying attention to his match when he came to perform, Roberts somehow took revenge in an unusual way. He got out of the ring and he brandished his snake towards Ivana, that even touched her chest, and she fell backwards. According to the wrestler, she was so angry after this incident that she allegedly paid 2 of her bodyguards to beat Roberts up in his hotel room. But fortunately, Donald was a fan of this superstar and would have calmed Ivana down. Do you realize how amazing this story is? In any case, what's for sure when we learn this, we understand that it was better not to do something else when you were looking at a Jake Roberts match. And if you found this story completely crazy, wait to see the other ones, because there is more to come about Donald Trump and it's just as amazing. So make sure to stay until the end of our video and be prepared to be surprised. Donald Trump's first appearance on Monday Night Raw, WWE's flagship show, was at the beginning of 2007. When the famous Battle of the Billionaires, in which he was going to face Vince McMahon by proxy in a certain way, was taking place. And on that day, one of the things that we immediately notice when we see the 45th President of the United States is that he is wearing a big, very long and thick coat over his suit. So of course, as spectators, we see this outfit as a simple detail, but there is a whole story about it, and we could say that it was a bone of contention. In fact, behind the scenes, there are two stories that complement each other about it. The first one, which was told to us by the writer Kurt Bauer, is that Vince McMahon, the boss of the WWE, went crazy when he saw that he arrived wearing this coat, because it clearly made him look more imposing. And according to the boss of the company, it was a strategy of his rival to appear taller and stronger than him. Also probably with shoulder pads to give him even more volume. The second one, told by Jim Ross, the best commentator of all time, is that when he arrived backstage at WWE to do his first television segment, Trump would have been nervous in the middle of all these wrestlers with very muscular and tanned bodies. And he would have put on this coat even if it was way too warm to avoid looking like a loser. And these are his own words, reported by JR. So the big question is, did Donald Trump put on this coat from a purely competitive perspective compared to Vince McMahon in order to appear superior? Which wouldn't be very surprising given the big egos of these two characters who are absolutely not shy about it. Or did he put it on because he felt insecure in a certain way in front of all these Greek gods that he met backstage? Everyone will do their own interpretation, but it certainly looks like Donald Trump did not put on this coat by chance. In 2004, an incredible scene, if we take a step back, took place at WrestleMania, and it directly involves Donald Trump. That year, the showcase of the Immortals was at Madison Square Garden in New York, the most famous arena in the world, and one of the temples of pro wrestling. And we had a segment on the show during which Jesse Ventura, a former wrestler who converted to politics and who even became the governor of Minnesota, was going to interview someone in the audience. And at that moment, he will head to none other than Donald Trump, who was sitting at ringside. And the content of this interaction between the two men is particularly interesting when we know that the billionaire is going to make a career in politics a few years later. Ventura is going to ask him if he can count on his support if he runs for president in 2008, because according to him, it is time for a wrestler to be in the White House. Donald will guarantee that he will support him. But who could have imagined seeing this scene? That not in 2008, but in 2016, there would actually be a personality who has a very strong link with wrestling as President of the United States. In any case, it's a segment that we don't necessarily remember when we look back at WrestleMania 20, but it's nevertheless completely crazy. Donald Trump's first contacts with the wrestling universe go back to the late 80s, with the two WrestleManias that he hosted. And in addition to being great successes, given that the customers of the Trump Plaza were delighted and that they were the ones who asked Donald to once again do the showcase of the Immortals in his establishment after the first edition that he organized, these WrestleManias also made history for an important reason. So on the one hand, it's true that there weren't as many spectators as WrestleMania 3 for example, because it was a much smaller venue. And we could also say that the WrestleMania 4 that Trump hosted was unique in history because it was a big tournament to crown a new champion. But more than anything else, these editions were real entertainment weekends and not just wrestling shows. For the first time in history and under the influence of Donald Trump, there was going to be a whole festival on the occasion of these WrestleManias, with, among other things, an autograph session of the wrestlers, a 5K race in which everyone could participate, or a big brunch on Sunday morning. Nowadays, it has become normal that on the occasion of WrestleMania, WWE was already in the city the days before to do its WrestleMania Axxess, where fans can do activities and meet some superstars. This is clearly something that makes the experience of going to WrestleMania even more special for the fans. It therefore deserves to be emphasized that it was in the shows that Donald Trump organized that all of this happened for the first time. Probably also to encourage as many spectators as possible to stay at Trump Plaza. which was also a hotel, during the entire WrestleMania weekend. Just for this innovation that he has brought, the real estate tycoon has made an impact on the history of the grandest stage of them all. A lighter story that concerns Donald Trump and his past with pro wrestling was told to us by the one and only Chris Jericho. It was none other than Vince McMahon himself who would have told him about it, and you will see that it is a hilarious scene to imagine. Apparently, one day, Vince went to a concert with several important people, including his wife Linda and Donald Trump. And you should know that this event took place at the Axxess Arena, which has been renamed Hard Rock Live in the meantime. A venue that the real estate mogul opened in 1990 in Atlantic City, and where there would be concerts of Elton John, Green Day, and Phil Collins, just to name a few. And apparently, at one point, the big boss of the WWE lit a joint during the concert. When Trump realized it, he told him that he couldn't do that here. And at that moment, Vince replied to him, "I just did." We don't know how this story ended, but what is certain is that the relationship between Donald and Vince is special, to say the least. And besides, it's crazy to think that in their friendship over the years, Trump has even sued the WWE boss when the latter's plan to create his own football league, the XFL, failed. On the one hand, Trump criticized McMahon for having mismanaged the XFL, while on the other, Vince accused Donald of not having given as much money as he had promised. The relationship through time between the two billionaires has clearly been turbulent. To this day, the story between Donald Trump and wrestling has only known one setback, and that was in June 2009. At that time, WWE had an idea to completely revive the interest of the viewers and try a great renewal, which could only be good considering that the ratings of Monday Night Raw were going down for years. Vince McMahon announced that he had received a financial offer that he could not refuse to take control of Raw, which has been the company's flagship weekly show since 1993. And the man who made this offer, in fiction of course, is no other than Donald Trump. And it's true that it was a good idea, considering that the last time he had been involved in an on-screen storyline was in 2007, and that he had played a major role in the success of the Battle of the Billionaires in terms of weekly ratings and especially pay-per-view buys, since WrestleMania 23 remains to this day the second best-selling show in WWE history, behind WrestleMania 28, in which The Rock and John Cena faced off for the first time. We could therefore hope that Trump's presence would increase the number of viewers and create a new dynamic. Except that something happened that the company had not anticipated at all. However, everything started well, with Donald announcing that the first show of this new era, in which he would be physically present, would be commercial free, with also a full refund of the tickets for all the people in the arena, with a title match between Randy Orton and Triple H. And even the beginning of the concept of the guest hosts, namely different celebrities each week who would be in charge of the Red brand. But what turned everything upside down and what forced WWE to stop this angle with Donald was the fact that after announcing everywhere that Raw had been bought out, including in an official press release, the company's stock market share fell by almost 7%. Investors began to withdraw their money from the company because they believed there were real changes, which is sometimes a bad sign. What is incredible is that people took this announcement very seriously and believed that it was real, while it wasn't. This is really a mind-blowing situation, since fiction had direct consequences on reality, which WWE had not anticipated at all. Of course, Trump is not responsible for the fact that investors believed it was real, and his presence in this Raw enabled the show to have its best rating in a long time. Efforts were made to give a special and better show than usual, and we can only regret that because of a silly story, Trump did not stay for several weeks in 2009, and perhaps revolutionized Monday Night Raw even more. Wasn't that crazy? Can you imagine how rich Donald Trump's history in pro wrestling is, and how successful he was in this industry? And what about his relationship with Vince McMahon? Over time, Trump was able to show the respect and admiration he has for wrestlers and the sports entertainment business more generally through the different roles he had. All of this probably makes him the celebrity with the biggest impact in pro wrestling. We can say that this topic raises a lot of questions. I hope you had a good time watching this video, and I invite you to stay in the paradise of wrestling to look at some other ones. See you right away.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. What?